The dust kicked up around the spurs of Wade Davenport's boots as he stepped onto the wooden planks outside the Golden Rose Saloon. And what he saw through the grimy window made his jaw tighten with a fury he had not felt since the war ended back in 1865. It was 1873 now, and Riverside, Kansas had grown from a dusty crossroads into a proper cattle town on the Kishom Trail. Wade had been riding through, planning to water his horse and move on, but the sound of a woman crying out had stopped him cold. Through the window, he could see her, a young woman with golden hair trying to back away from a man twice her size who had her cornered near the bar. The saloon owner, a rat-faced man named Silas, was laughing along with the drunk cowhand who had her trapped. Wade pushed through the batwing doors hard enough that they swung back and cracked against the walls. The piano player's fingers stumbled on the keys. Every head in the saloon turned toward him. "That is enough," Wade said, his voice carrying across the sudden silence. The drunk cowhand spun around, still gripping the woman's wrist. "This does not concern you, stranger. This here is Silas's property, and he is letting me have some fun with her before I ride out." Wade's blue eyes went cold as winter steel. He was 30 years old, had fought through the war, and had seen enough cruelty to last several lifetimes. "Let her go. Now." The woman's eyes met his for just a moment. They were green, the color of prairie grass in springtime, and filled with a desperate hope that made something twist in Wade's chest. She could not have been more than 22 or 23, far too young to have the kind of weariness he saw in her face. "You best move along," Silas said from behind the bar, his hand moving toward something Wade could not see. "Willa owes me $3,000. She is working off her debt, and that is legal and proper." $3,000. Wade kept his hand near his revolver. "For what?" "Her passage from Ohio, her room and board for the past year, her dresses, her food. It all adds up." Silas's smile showed yellowed teeth. "She signed a contract. It is all legal." Wade had heard of such arrangements. Women desperate for a new start would sign contracts they barely understood, only to find themselves trapped in situations they could never escape. The debts would grow faster than they could possibly pay them off, with interest added and expenses multiplied, until freedom became impossible. "How much has she paid so far?" Wade asked. "That is not your concern." Silas's hand closed around what looked like a shotgun under the bar. "I am making it my concern." Wade's voice dropped lower. "How much?" The drunk cowhand had released Willa's wrist, but was still standing too close to her. She had wrapped her arms around herself, and Wade could see bruises on her forearms. His anger burned hotter. "Maybe $200 over the past year," Silas admitted. "But with interest and her expenses, the debt has only grown. She owes me more now than when she started." "That is theft, not a debt." "It is legal," Silas repeated. "And if you do not leave my establishment right now, I will have the sheriff remove you." Wade knew the sheriff in towns like this often looked the other way when it came to saloon owners and their business practices. He also knew he had about $4,000 in his saddlebags, money he had saved from years of working cattle drives and breaking horses. It was supposed to be his stake for buying land of his own, for finally settling down after years of drifting. He looked at Willa again. She was watching him with those green eyes, and he saw something in her expression that decided things for him. She reminded him of his younger sister, who had died of fever before the war. She had that same hopeful desperation, that same quiet strength barely holding on. "I will buy her contract," Wade said. The saloon went utterly silent. Even the piano player stopped pretending to play. "What did you say?" Silas leaned forward. "I will buy her contract, all of it. $3,000, and she walks out of here free." She owes me $3,500 now, Silas said quickly, his greedy eyes lighting up. Interest just today brought it up. Wade's jaw clenched, but he nodded. $3,500 then. But I want the contract destroyed, and a signed paper saying she is free and clear of all debts to you, witnessed by everyone in this saloon. Silas licked his lips. $3,500 was more money than his saloon probably made in 6 months. You have that kind of money on you. In my saddlebags. I will get it, but first you write out that paper and have these men witness it, and that drunk releases her right now. The cowhand stepped back from Willa, suddenly interested in his whiskey again. Silas hurried to find paper and a pen, his hands almost shaking with eagerness. Wade did not move from his position by the door, aware that every man in the saloon was watching him, trying to figure out his angle. He did not have an angle. He just could not walk away from her. Silas scratched out a crude bill of sale and a release from debt, blotting it carefully. Here. Now where is my money? Everyone here witnesses this, Wade said loudly. Willa Thompson is released from all debts to Silas as of today, April 14, 1873, upon payment of $3,500. Anyone here disputes that? The men in the saloon mumbled and nodded. A few of them looked almost ashamed, as though they had forgotten there was any other way to treat another human being. Wade backed out through the doors, keeping his eyes on Silas. He walked to where his horse, a big buckskin gelding, was tied at the rail. From his saddlebags, he pulled out a canvas bag that held everything he had been saving for 8 years. He counted out $3,500 in gold and silver coins and paper money, his hands steady even though his future was evaporating with each dollar. When he walked back in, Willa was standing in the same spot, looking like she might faint. He dumped the money on the bar in front of Silas, who immediately began counting it with trembling fingers. "It is all there," Wade said. He picked up the paper and checked it over. Crude as it would serve. "Miss Thompson, you are free to go," she stared at him. "I do not understand. Why would you do that for me?" Her voice was soft, with a slight Ohio accent that confirmed her story. It was also the most beautiful voice Wade had ever heard, which was a foolish thought to have at a moment like this. "Because it was the right thing to do," he said simply. He folded the paper and held it out to her. "This is yours. You keep it safe in case anyone questions your freedom." Her fingers shook as she took the paper. "But I do not have any money. I have nowhere to go. I cannot pay you back." "I am not asking you to pay me back." Silas finished counting and swept the money into a box under his bar, all pretense of civility gone now that he had his payment. "Get out of my saloon, both of you. She is not welcome here anymore." Willa looked down at herself. She was wearing a green satin dress that was meant to look fancy but was worn and stained. "I do not have any other clothes. Everything I own is in the room upstairs and it all belongs to him." "Then go get your things," Wade said. "I will wait right here." "You go up them stairs, girl, and I will have you arrested for theft," Silas warned. "Everything in this establishment belongs to me." Wade's hand moved to his gun and Silas went pale. "She is getting her personal belongings." "Unless you want to argue the point." Silas pressed his lips together and said nothing. Willa hurried toward the stairs at the back of the saloon, moving quickly as though afraid Silas would change his mind. Wade kept his position by the door, watching every man in the room. The drunk cowhand had slunk into a corner, all his bravado gone. The other customers were suddenly very interested in their drinks. Willa came back down after a few minutes carrying a small carpet bag that looked like it might fall apart at any moment. "This is everything," she said quietly. Wade gestured for her to go ahead of him through the doors. Outside, the afternoon sun was bright and hot, making Willa squint. She looked even younger in the daylight and even more exhausted. There were dark circles under her eyes and her skin was too pale. "You have a horse?" Wade asked. "No, I have not ridden in over a year, not since I came here." Wade untied his buckskin. "Then you will ride and I will walk for a while. We need to get out of this town." "Where are we going?" She looked lost, clutching her carpet bag to her chest. That was a good question. Wade had been planning to head further west, maybe toward Colorado, to look for ranch land. Now he had barely $500 to his name, not nearly enough to start over the way he had planned. "There is a town called Junction Creek about 20 miles west of here," he said. "It is bigger than Riverside, more respectable. We can figure things out there." "I still do not understand why you did that." Willa's green eyes searched his face. "You do not know me. That was a lot of money." Wade helped her up onto his horse, trying not to notice how light she was, how her hand trembled when he touched it. "I could not walk away," he said honestly. "I have seen too much cruelty in my life, Miss Thompson. When I can stop some of it, I do." She settled into the saddle, still looking dazed. "My name is Willa, just Willa. I have not been Miss Thompson in a long time." "Wade Davenport," he said, taking the reins and starting to walk. "Pleased to meet you, Willa. Pleased to meet you too, Mr. Davenport." She was quiet for a moment, then added in a whisper, "Thank you. I do not think anyone has ever done anything so kind for me in my whole life." Wade did not know what to say to that, so he just kept walking. Behind them, Riverside slowly disappeared in the dust, and Wade tried not to think about how he had just spent his entire future on a woman he did not know. The afternoon was hot, and the road was dusty. Wade kept a steady pace, his hand occasionally resting on his revolver. The Kishome Trail was generally safe this close to town, but there were always dangers for travelers, especially a man on foot and a woman alone. Willa was silent for the first hour, and Wade did not push her to talk. He could only imagine what she had been through over the past year. Finally, as the sun started to sink toward the horizon, she spoke. "I came from Ohio last year," she said quietly. "My parents died of fever within days of each other. I had no family left, no money. A woman came through town offering positions as seamstresses in Kansas. She said the pay was good, that we would have room and board. 5 of us girls signed on." Wade kept walking, listening. "When we got to Riverside, Silas was waiting for us. The woman who recruited us sold our contracts to him. We found out we were expected to work in the saloon, serving drinks and being friendly to the customers. When we protested, Silas showed us the contracts. We had agreed to repay our passage and expenses, and somehow those expenses had already grown to thousands of dollars each. He said we could work it off, or he would have us arrested for breach of contract." "What happened to the other girls?" Wade asked. "2 of them ran away in the first month. I do not know what happened to them. Another girl, Mary, she got sick with pneumonia last winter. Silas would not pay for a doctor. She died." Willa's voice broke slightly. "The last girl, Susan, she married a rancher who came through town. He paid off her debt, which was less than mine. They moved to Texas. I was happy for her, and you stayed. Where else could I go? I had no money, no horse, no family. Silas made sure we understood that if we ran, he would send the law after us, and most of the men in Riverside are afraid of him or in his pocket." She was quiet for a moment. "It got worse after Susan left. I was the only one left, and Silas kept raising my debt. He started letting men do more than just talk to me. I knew it was only a matter of time before he decided I owed him even more, and then I would never be free." Wade felt his anger burning again. "That should be illegal. Maybe it is, but no one cares enough to stop it. There are women like me in every town along this trail, Mr. Davenport. We are not the first and we will not be the last. Call me Wade," he said, "and I care enough. I stopped it for you." "Yes, you did." Her voice was full of wonder. "I still cannot believe you did that. I was praying for help, and then you walked through those doors like an answer to prayer." Wade was not sure he was anybody's answer to anything, but he appreciated the sentiment. "We will figure things out in Junction Creek. There must be respectable work there, a boarding house where you can stay." "What about you? Where will you go?" "I will find work. I can break horses, work cattle, do ranch work. I have skills." He did not mention that his dreams of his own land were gone now, spent on her freedom. He did not regret it exactly, but he was still coming to terms with what he had done. They stopped to rest when it got dark, making a small camp off the road. Wade had some jerky and hardtack in his saddlebags, which they shared. Willa tried to give him back most of her portion. "You need to eat," Wade said firmly. "When was the last time you had a proper meal?" "I do not remember," she admitted. "Sila's fed us enough to keep us working, but not much more." Wade made sure she ate every bite. He fashioned a bedroll for her from his blanket and told her to sleep. She protested that he would be cold, but he insisted he had spent enough nights sleeping on the ground that one more would not matter. He sat up keeping watch, his rifle across his knees, listening to the sounds of the prairie night. Willa fell asleep quickly, exhausted, and Wade found himself watching her in the firelight. She looked peaceful in sleep, younger than her years, and he felt a fierce protectiveness rise in him. He had saved her from Sila's, and he would make sure she stayed safe. They reached Junction Creek late the next afternoon. It was indeed bigger than Riverside, with a proper main street, several stores, a bank, a church, and multiple saloons. Wade took Willa to a boarding house run by a woman named Mrs. Clara Henderson, a stern-looking widow in her 50s. "I need a room for the lady," Wade said. "Something safe and respectable." Mrs. Henderson looked Willa up and down, taking in the worn saloon dress and the carpet bag. Her expression was disapproving. "What kind of establishment do you think I run, mister?" "A respectable one, which is why I brought her here," Wade said evenly. "Miss Thompson was working off a debt contract in Riverside. I bought her freedom yesterday. She needs a safe place to stay while she finds work." Mrs. Henderson's expression softened slightly. "One of those contracts. I have heard about Sila's and his schemes." She looked at Willa with more sympathy. "Can you pay?" "I can pay for the first week," Wade said, pulling out some of his remaining money. "By then she should have found work." "I can sew," Willa said quickly. "I can clean, cook, do laundry." "I am a hard worker, Mrs. Henderson. I just need a chance." The older woman studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "I will give you a room, 1 week paid. After that, you work for your keep until you find something else. I can use help with the laundry and cooking for my boarders." "Thank you," Willa said, her relief evident. "Thank you so much." Mrs. Henderson showed Willa upstairs to a small but clean room. Wade waited in the parlor, suddenly unsure of what to do next. He had gotten Willa to safety, had made sure she had a roof over her head for now. He should probably find work for himself and move on. But the thought of leaving her made something in his chest tighten uncomfortably. Willa came back downstairs, wearing a simple cotton dress that Mrs. Henderson had lent her. It was plain and a bit too big, but it made her look less like a saloon girl and more like a regular young woman. Her hair was pulled back simply, and her face was freshly washed. She looked beautiful. "Mrs. Henderson is very kind," Willa said. "She is letting me have some of her daughter's old clothes. Her daughter got married and moved to Denver." "That is good," Wade said, oddly tongue-tied. They stood there awkwardly for a moment. Then Willa stepped forward and took his hand in both of hers. "Wade, I can never repay you for what you have done. You gave me my life back. If there is ever anything I can do for you, anything at all, please tell me." Her hands were small and warm in his. Wade found himself not wanting to let go. You do not owe me anything, Willa. I just want you to be safe and happy. I will be, thanks to you. She hesitated, then said, Will you stay in Junction Creek for a while, or are you moving on? Wade had not thought that far ahead. I need to find work. I spent most of my money buying your freedom. I am sorry, she said immediately, looking guilty. Do not be. It was my choice. He squeezed her hands gently, then released them. I will stay in town for a few days at least, make sure you are settled. There is a rancher outside of town who might need help. I heard some men talking about it on the trail. The Rocking W Ranch, Mrs. Henderson said, coming into the parlor. Warren Winters owns it. He is always looking for good hands, especially men who can break horses. He is a fair man, pays decent wages. I will ride out there tomorrow, Wade said. He looked at Willa. Will you be all right here? I will be fine, better than fine. She smiled at him, a real smile that transformed her whole face. Thank you again, Wade, for everything. Wade left before he could do something foolish, like tell her that her smile made him feel like he had been kicked in the chest by a mule. He found a cheap room above one of the saloons and spent a restless night wondering why saving Willa felt less like charity and more like the most important thing he had ever done. The next morning, he rode out to the Rocking W. The ranch was impressive, with a large main house, several barns, and extensive corrals. Warren Winters turned out to be a weathered man in his 50s with shrewd eyes and a firm handshake. Mrs. Henderson sent word you might be coming, Winters said. She says you are good with horses. I can break them, train them, work cattle from them, whatever you need. I have 20 green horses that need breaking. Pay is $1 a day plus room and board, bonus if you break the horses without ruining them. Winters studied him. Mrs. Henderson also said you did something decent for a young lady who was in trouble. That speaks well of you. I do not tolerate troublemakers or drunks on my ranch. I do not drink much and I do not make trouble, Wade said. Then you are hired. You can start today if you want. Wade started immediately. The work was hard but familiar, and he was glad to have it. The Rocking W had a bunkhouse for the ranch hands, but Wade kept his room in town. He told himself it was because the bunkhouse was crowded and noisy, but the truth was he wanted to be near Willa. He saw her every evening when he came back to town. She was working hard for Mrs. Henderson, doing laundry and helping with meals for the boarders. Mrs. Henderson grudgingly admitted that Willa was a good worker and said she could stay on as long as she needed. Wade and Willa fell into a pattern. He would stop by the boarding house after work, and they would sit on the porch and talk. She told him more about her life in Ohio, about her parents and how hard it had been to lose them both. He told her about the war, about his own family who were all gone now, about his dreams of owning land someday. You will have that dream, Willa said firmly one evening. You will save up your money again and buy your land. I know you will. Maybe, Wade said. He did not mention that saving $3,500 had taken him 8 years, and he was not getting any younger. You could have had it by now if you had not helped me, Willa said quietly. I think about that every day, Wade. You gave up your dream for me. I did not give it up. I just delayed it. He looked at her in the fading light. She had been in Junction Creek for 3 weeks now, and she looked healthier, less haunted, and I would make the same choice again. Why? She asked, her green eyes serious. Why would you do that for me? You did not know me. I could have been anyone. Wade had asked himself the same question many times. Because when I saw you in that saloon, I saw someone who deserved better. I saw someone worth saving, and I was right. Willa was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached over and took his hand, lacing her fingers through his. You are a good man, Wade Davenport, the best man I have ever known. Wade's heart was pounding. He had been fighting his growing feelings for Willa, telling himself he had no right to them, that she had been through too much to want anything from him. But sitting there with her hand in his, he could not deny it any more. He was falling in love with her. Over the next weeks, their evening conversations grew longer. Wade found excuses to stay longer, to walk with her to the general store or the church. Willa started meeting him at the edge of town when he rode in from the ranch, her face lighting up when she saw him. Mrs. Henderson watched them with knowing eyes but said nothing. One evening in early June, Wade brought Willa a small gift. It was nothing much, just a hair ribbon in green that matched her eyes, but her reaction made it worth it. "Oh, Wade," she breathed, holding it like it was made of gold. "It is beautiful. You should not have spent your money on me." "I wanted to." He helped her tie it in her hair, his fingers clumsy but gentle. "You deserve pretty things, Willa." She turned to face him, and they were suddenly very close. "I do not need pretty things," she said softly. "I just need you." Wade's breath caught. "Willa, I do not want to presume anything. You have been through so much, and I would never want to make you uncomfortable or feel obligated to me." "Obligated?" She shook her head. "Wade, do you not understand? I am falling in love with you. I have been falling in love with you since the moment you walked into that saloon. I tried not to because I thought you just saw me as someone to rescue, someone to feel sorry for. But these past weeks, spending time with you, I cannot help it anymore." Wade felt like he could not breathe. "You are falling in love with me. Yes, you foolish man." She was smiling and crying at the same time. "How could I not? You saved me. You have been nothing but kind and respectful. You have never asked for anything in return. You have treated me like I matter, like I am worth something. How could I not love you?" Wade pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. "I love you too, Willa. I have loved you for weeks now, but I was afraid to say it. I was afraid you would think I expected something from you because I bought your freedom. You freed me, Wade. In every way that matters, you freed me." She pulled back to look up at him. "And now I am choosing you freely because I love you." He kissed her then, softly at first, then deeper as she kissed him back. It was not his first kiss, but it felt like it, like he had never really known what kissing meant until now. When they finally pulled apart, they were both smiling. "We should do this properly," Wade said. "I do not have much to offer you right now, but I will work hard and save money. When I have enough, I will buy some land and build us a house. Then I will marry you if you will have me." "I will have you," Willa said immediately. "I do not care if you have land or money. I will marry you right now if you want. I want to do right by you. I want to give you a proper home, a good life. Then we will wait and save together," Willa decided. "Mrs. Henderson is paying me a small wage now. Between your salary and mine, we can save faster." They told Mrs. Henderson about their intentions that night. The older woman looked between them, then nodded. "I thought as much. You are good for each other. But Wade, you will not be visiting Willa's room unchaperoned, and there will be no impropriety under my roof. Is that understood?" "Yes, madam," Wade said quickly. "I respect Willa too much for that." "Good. Then you have my blessing." Mrs. Henderson actually smiled. "It is nice to see something good come out of all that ugliness in Riverside." Wade threw himself into his work at the Rocking W. Warren Winters was impressed with his skill and work ethic and gave him a raise after 2 months. Willa continued working for Mrs. Henderson, and in her spare time, she took in sewing work, making and mending clothes for the townspeople. Every penny they made went into a tin box that Willa kept hidden in her room. They courted properly, with evening walks and Sunday church services together. The townspeople of Junction Creek accepted them, though there were a few who whispered about Willa's past. Wade quickly made it known that anyone who insulted Willa would answer to him, and the whispers stopped. By autumn, they had saved enough to make Wade start seriously looking at land. Warren Winters, who had become something of a mentor to Wade, told him about a section of land about 5 miles from the rocking W. It had a creek running through it, good grazing, and a small cabin that needed work. The man who owned it died without heirs, Winters explained. The bank holds the title. They are asking $800 for it. That is fair, considering the water rights. Wade and Willa went to look at the land together. The cabin was small and needed repairs, but it was sound. The land was beautiful, with rolling prairie and the creek lined with cottonwood trees. Willa fell in love with it immediately. "We could make this work," she said, her eyes bright. "We could fix up the cabin, run some cattle. Oh, Wade, it is perfect." Wade counted their savings that night. They had $920. It was enough for the land with a little left over for supplies. The next day he went to the bank and bought the land. When he brought Willa out to show her the deed with her name on it alongside his, she cried. "Our land," she kept saying. "We own land." "We will get married now," Wade said. "We have a home to bring you to. It is not much, but it is ours." They were married in the church in Junction Creek on a crisp October morning in 1873. Willa wore a simple white dress she had made herself, and Wade wore his best clothes. Mrs. Henderson cried during the ceremony. Warren Winters stood as Wade's witness, and Mrs. Henderson stood for Willa. The church was full of people from town who had come to wish them well. After the ceremony, they rode out to their land, to their cabin. Wade carried Willa over the threshold, both of them laughing. The cabin was sparse, with only a bed, a table, 2 chairs, and a stove that Wade had bought. But it was theirs, and that made it beautiful. That night, lying in their bed with Willa in his arms, Wade thought about how much his life had changed in 6 months. He had walked into the Golden Rose Saloon expecting nothing more than a drink, and he had walked out with his future. "Are you happy?" he asked Willa quietly. "Happier than I ever thought possible," she said, snuggling closer. "Sometimes I am afraid I will wake up and find this was all a dream. It is not a dream. This is real, and it is ours." He kissed her forehead. "I love you, Willa Davenport. I love you too." She was quiet for a moment, then said, "You know, when I was in Riverside, I used to pray every night that God would save me. I prayed for months and nothing happened. I started to think God had forgotten about me. Then you walked through those doors and I understood. God did not forget. He was just waiting for you." Wade held her tighter. He was not sure he deserved that kind of faith, but he was going to spend the rest of his life trying to be worthy of it. The winter of 1873 was hard but good. Wade worked for Warren Winters during the day and came home to Willa every night. She made their cabin into a home, sewing curtains, cooking meals, making everything warm and welcoming. They saved money and bought 6 head of cattle in the spring, the beginning of their own herd. Willa got pregnant that first winter. She told Wade in March, her face glowing with joy and nervousness. "I am going to have a baby. In the fall, probably September." Wade picked her up and spun her around, both of them laughing. "A baby, we are going to be parents. Are you happy?" Willa asked. "I know we are still getting started and money is tight." "I am thrilled," Wade said honestly. "This is everything I ever wanted, Willa. You, our land, our family. This is perfect." They prepared for the baby's arrival with excitement. Willa sewed tiny clothes and blankets. Wade built a cradle from cottonwood, carving it carefully in the evenings. Mrs. Henderson visited often, bringing advice and supplies. Warren Winters and his wife, Alina, became like family, helping with whatever was needed. Their son was born on a cool September evening in 1874. He came into the world hollering, healthy and strong. Willa was exhausted but radiant, holding their baby while Wade looked on in wonder. "What should we name him?" Willa asked. "I was thinking James, after my father," Wade said. "James Davenport, what do you think?" James Davenport, Willa repeated, testing it out. It is perfect. Hello, little James. Welcome to the world. Wade held his son for the first time, marveling at how small and perfect he was. I promise you, he whispered to James, I will give you a better life than I had. You will grow up knowing you are loved and wanted. The years that followed were good ones. Their herd grew slowly but steadily. Wade's reputation as a horseman spread, and he was able to supplement their income by breaking and training horses for other ranchers. Willa kept their home, raised James, and took in sewing work when she could. When James was 2, Willa had another baby, a daughter they named Emma. 2 years after that came another son, Thomas. Their cabin was full of noise and love and laughter. Wade added rooms to the cabin as their family grew, and he built a proper barn for their growing herd. Life was not always easy. There were hard winters and dry summers. There were cattle lost to disease and crops that failed. There were times when money was so tight that Wade did not know how they would make it through. But they always did, through hard work and determination and their love for each other. Through it all, Wade never forgot that day in the Golden Rose Saloon. Every year on April 14th, he and Willa would sit together and remember. She would ask him the same question she had asked that first day. Why would you do that for me? And he would give her the same answer. Because it was the right thing to do. Then she would kiss him and say, it was the best thing anyone ever did. It gave me my whole life. The children grew. James was serious and thoughtful, good with horses like his father. Emma was bright and curious, always asking questions. Thomas was the adventurous one, always getting into mischief. Wade and Willa raised them with love and discipline, teaching them the value of hard work and treating others with respect. By 1880, they had 50 head of cattle and their own grazing land. Wade had completely rebuilt the cabin into a proper ranch house. They were not rich, but they were comfortable and secure. Their children were healthy and happy. It was more than Wade had ever dreamed possible. One evening in the summer of 1880, after the children were in bed, Wade and Willa sat on the porch watching the sunset. It was the same sunset they had watched countless times before, but it never got old. You remember when we first sat together like this? Willa asked, her hand in his. In Junction Creek on Mrs. Henderson's porch. I remember, Wade said. I remember being terrified to tell you I was falling in love with you. I was terrified too, Willa admitted. I could not believe someone like you could love someone like me. Wade turned to look at her. She was 30 now and even more beautiful than she had been at 23. The years had only made her stronger, more confident. The haunted look that had been in her eyes when he first met her was long gone. You are the strongest, bravest, most wonderful woman I have ever known, Wade said seriously. I am the lucky one, Willa. You could have done so much better than a broke cowboy with nothing but good intentions. You were never just a broke cowboy, Willa said firmly. You were the man who saw me as worth saving. You were the man who gave up his dreams so I could have mine. You were the man who loved me when I had nothing to offer you. That is not nothing, Wade. That is everything. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars come out. Their cattle lowed softly in the distance. Inside the house, one of the children stirred and settled back to sleep. I want to tell the children the whole story someday, Willa said quietly. I want them to know where I came from, what you did for me. I want them to understand what real love looks like. We will tell them when they are old enough to understand, Wade agreed. He had no shame in their story. He was proud of Willa for surviving what she had been through and proud of himself for having the courage to help her. More years passed. The children grew into teenagers. James, at 14, was already working the ranch alongside Wade. Emma, at 12, was helping her mother with everything from cooking to keeping the ranch accounts. 10-year-old Thomas was the one they had to watch, always coming up with schemes and adventures. The ranch continued to grow. They had over 100 head of cattle by 1885. Wade hired 2 ranch hands to help with the work. They were respected members of the community, known for their honesty and hard work. Warren Winters, now in his 60s, told Wade he was like the son he never had. Mrs. Henderson, retired now and living with her daughter in Denver, wrote regularly, always asking after her girl Willa. In the fall of 1886, when Wade was 43 and Willa was 35, they decided to tell their children the full story of how they met. James was 16, Emma 14, and Thomas 12, old enough to understand. They gathered the family in the living room after supper. Wade and Willa had discussed how to tell it, deciding that honesty was best. They told the children everything, about Willa being trapped in Riverside, about Wade buying her freedom, about the choice he made to give up his savings. The children listened with wide eyes. When the story was finished, Emma had tears running down her face. "You gave up everything for Mother," she said to Wade. "You did not even know her." "I knew enough," Wade said. "I knew she was worth saving." "That is the most romantic thing I have ever heard," Emma said firmly. James looked at his mother with new understanding. "You were very brave, Mother. To survive all that and still be kind and good, that took courage." "Your father gave me the chance to be brave," Willa said. "Before him, I was just trying to survive." Thomas, always practical, asked, "Did you ever regret it, Father? Giving up all that money?" Wade looked at Willa, at their 3 beautiful children, at the home they had built together. "Not for one single second," he said honestly. "That money bought me everything that matters. It bought my family." The years continued to roll by, full and rich. James married a girl from town when he was 20, a sweet young woman named Sarah, and they built a house on the far end of the ranch property. Emma went to Denver to train as a teacher, though she came home often. Thomas, true to his adventurous nature, talked about going to Wyoming to try his hand at ranching there. Wade and Willa became grandparents when James and Sarah had a baby girl they named Clara, after Mrs. Henderson. Wade held his granddaughter and felt the same wonder he had felt holding his own children. "We are getting old," he said to Willa one night, watching her brush out her hair. There was silver in it now, mixed with the gold. "We are getting older," Willa corrected, "but we are not old yet." "We have a lot of years left," Wade Davenport. She was right, as she usually was. They had more good years ahead of them, years of watching their children build their own lives, years of working the ranch together, years of sitting on the porch at sunset. In the summer of 1893, exactly 20 years after Wade bought Willa's freedom, they decided to go back to Riverside. Neither of them had been back since that day in 1873. They were curious to see how the town had changed, and perhaps to lay some old ghosts to rest. Riverside had grown considerably. The Golden Rose Saloon was gone, burned down in a fire years earlier. Silas was dead, they learned, drunk himself to death not long after they left. The town was more civilized now, with a proper school and several churches. They did not stay long. There was nothing for them there, just old memories. On the ride back home, Willa was quiet. "What are you thinking?" Wade asked. "I am thinking about the girl I was 20 years ago," Willa said. "So scared, so hopeless, I could not see any way out. And then you walked through those doors and my whole life changed in an instant." "You would have found a way out eventually," Wade said. "You are too strong to have stayed trapped forever." "Maybe," Willa said, "but I do not think I would have found happiness. I would have been too damaged, too broken. You did not just save my life, Wade. You saved who I am. You gave me the chance to be whole." Wade reached over and took her hand, After 20 years, it still fit perfectly in his. Why would you do that for me? Willa asked, smiling because she knew what he would say. Because it was the right thing to do, Wade answered, just like always. It was the best thing, Willa said. The very best thing. They rode home together, to the ranch they had built, to the family they had raised, to the life they had made. It had not been easy, but it had been worth every struggle. Wade thought about the $3,500 he had spent in that saloon 20 years ago. It was the best investment he had ever made. More years passed in contentment. Their children were grown with families of their own. James ran most of the ranch now, though Wade still helped when he could. Emma had married a teacher and was raising her family in town, running her own school. Thomas had gone to Wyoming, but he came home often, always full of stories of his adventures. The grandchildren came regularly, filling the house with noise and energy. Wade and Willa delighted in them, spoiling them with love and stories and whatever treats they could provide. In the spring of 1900, Wade turned 57. Willa was 50. They were still healthy and strong, but they had started to talk about what would come next, about slowing down and letting James take over the ranch completely. One evening that spring, sitting on their porch as the sun set, Wade said, "I have been thinking." "About what?" Willa asked. "About how lucky I am. About how one decision, one moment gave me everything." He looked at her. "I could have walked past that saloon. I could have decided it was not my business. My whole life would have been different." "Mine too," Willa said quietly. "I do not like to think about what would have happened to me if you had walked past. But I did not walk past, I walked in, and I found you." Wade took her hand. "I found everything. We found each other," Willa corrected. "And we built this life together. You may have saved me, Wade, but I saved you too. You said once that you had been drifting, that you had no purpose. I gave you purpose." "You gave me everything," Wade said. "You gave me a reason to build something, a reason to dream. You gave me children and grandchildren. You gave me a home. You gave me love. And you gave me freedom," Willa said. "Not just freedom from Silas, but freedom to be myself, to love, to dream, to build. You believed in me when I did not believe in myself." They sat in the gathering darkness, hands clasped, hearts full. They had been married for 27 years, and Wade loved Willa more with each passing day. He had heard that love faded with time, but his experience was the opposite. His love for Willa had only grown deeper and stronger, like roots going down into good soil. The years continued to be kind to them. They watched their grandchildren grow, celebrated marriages and births, mourned losses when friends and family passed. They grew older together, their hair turning white, their steps slower, but their love never diminishing. On their 30th anniversary in 1903, their children threw them a party. The whole community came to celebrate Wade and Willa Davenport, the couple whose love story had become legend in Junction Creek. People spoke of the cowboy who had given up everything to save the woman he loved, and of the woman who had turned that sacrifice into a lifetime of devotion. During the party, Emma asked her parents to tell the story again. Wade and Willa looked at each other and smiled. "It started in April of 1873, Wade began, just like he always did. "I was riding through Riverside, Kansas, when I saw something that stopped me cold." He told the story the way he always told it, with Willa filling in her parts. Their children and grandchildren had heard it many times, but they never tired of it. It was their family's foundation story, the moment everything began. When Wade got to the part where he counted out the money to Silas, young Clara, James's oldest daughter, asked, "Were you scared, grandfather? That was all your money." "No," Wade said honestly. "I was not scared, I was certain. It was the most certain I had been about anything in my life." "And you, grandmother," Clara asked Willa, "what did you think when he did that?" "I thought he was either the craziest man I had ever met or an angel sent from heaven," Willa said, smiling. "I am still not entirely sure which." Everyone laughed. The party continued late into the night, full of food and music and love. Wade watched his family, all of them here because he had made one choice on one day 30 years ago. It was almost overwhelming to think about. As the party wound down and people started to leave, Wade and Willa stood on their porch, waving goodbye. When the last wagon disappeared down the road, they turned to each other. 30 years, Willa said wonderingly. 30 years since you walked into that saloon. Best 30 years of my life, Wade said, and I hope we have 30 more. I do not think we will make it to 90, Willa said practically, but whatever time we have left, I want to spend it with you. Always, Wade promised, until the very end and beyond if there is a beyond. They went inside together, to the house they had built, to the bed they had shared for 30 years. Outside, the Kansas wind whispered through the cottonwoods by the creek, the same wind that had blown on that April day in 1873, when everything changed. The years that remained to them were peaceful. Wade eventually had to give up the heavy ranch work, but he still helped with the horses and the bookkeeping. Willa slowed down too, spending more time with her grandchildren and great-grandchildren, passing on her skills and her stories. They never left their ranch for long, never wanted to be anywhere but home. Junction Creek had given them a fresh start, and Kansas had given them a place to build their dreams. They were content. In 1907, Wade became ill with pneumonia. He was 64 and the sickness hit him hard. Willa nursed him through it, refusing to leave his side. He recovered, but it took something out of him. He was frailer after that, more tired. "I am not ready to let you go," Willa told him one night as she sat by his bed. "I need more time with you, Wade Davenport. We have more sunsets to watch together." "I am not planning on going anywhere," Wade said. But they both knew he was getting older, that time was catching up with him. He rallied through the spring and summer, determined to see another winter through. In the fall, their grandson Thomas, named after his uncle, asked them to tell the story one more time. "Why do you want to hear it again?" Wade asked. "You must have heard it 100 times. "Because it is our family's story," young Thomas said. "Because it reminds me that love is real, that people can be good, that one choice can change everything. I need to remember that, grandfather." So Wade told it again, with Willa adding her parts. His voice was weaker now, but the story was as strong as ever. When he got to the end, to the part where he and Willa rode out of Riverside together, he looked at his wife. "I would do it again," he said softly. 1,000 times over I would make the same choice." "I know," Willa said, tears in her eyes. "And I would fall in love with you 1,000 times over." Wade passed away peacefully in his sleep in December of 1907, with Willa holding his hand. He was 64 years old. He died in the house he had built, surrounded by the family he had created, secure in the knowledge that his life had mattered. Willa was devastated by his loss, but she found strength in their children and grandchildren. She lived another 8 years, staying on the ranch that she and Wade had built. She spent her time with her family, telling and retelling the story of how Wade had walked into a saloon in Riverside and changed her life forever. She never remarried. "I had the love of my life," she told anyone who suggested it. "I do not need another. Wade was enough for a lifetime and beyond." Willa passed away in her sleep in 1915 at the age of 65. She was buried next to Wade on a hill overlooking their ranch, under the cottonwood trees by the creek. Their children inscribed their shared gravestone with a simple epitaph: "Wade and Willa Davenport. He saved her. She saved him. They built a life of love." The ranch stayed in the family for generations. Their descendants continued to work the land, raise cattle, and tell the story of their great-grandparents who had proven that love could conquer anything, that one act of kindness could change the world. And every year on April 14th, the anniversary of the day Wade walked into the Golden Rose Saloon, the family gathered at the ranch for a celebration. They would stand by Wade and Willa's graves and remember the cowboy who gave up everything for love, and the woman who made that sacrifice worth it. The story spread beyond the family, becoming part of Junction Creek's history. The town erected a plaque in the town square, commemorating Wade and Willa Davenport and their remarkable love story. Schoolchildren learned about them, about how one choice made in courage and compassion created a legacy that lasted generations. In the 1920s, a newspaper reporter from Kansas City came to Junction Creek to write about Wade and Willa. She interviewed their children and grandchildren, collecting all the stories and memories. Her article ran in papers across the state, and suddenly people everywhere knew about the cowboy who bought a woman's freedom from a saloon and fell in love. Letters poured in from all over the country, from women who had been in similar situations to Willa's, thanking Wade's memory for showing that there were good men in the world. From men who said Wade's example had inspired them to stand up for what was right, even when it cost them something. The ranch prospered through the decades. James's descendants ran it well, growing it into one of the largest and most successful ranches in that part of Kansas. But they never forgot where it started, with $3,500 spent in a saloon in Riverside, with one man's decision to help a stranger. Emma's descendants became teachers and community leaders, spreading the values Wade and Willa had taught. Thomas's Wyoming ranch also thrived, and his descendants visited the Kansas ranch regularly, maintaining the family ties. Every generation added to the story, but the core remained the same. Wade walked into a saloon, saw a woman who needed help, and chose to help her at great personal cost. Willa whispered, "Why would you do that for me?" And he answered, "Because it was the right thing to do." And from that moment, they built a love that lasted a lifetime and beyond. The story became a parable about kindness, about sacrifice, about recognizing the worth of another human being. It was told at weddings and family gatherings, used as an example in sermons and speeches. Wade and Willa's love became a benchmark, a standard to aspire to. In the 1950s, one of Willa's great-great-granddaughters wrote a book about Wade and Willa's story. It became a bestseller, bringing their love story to an even wider audience. The book was historically accurate, based on family records and letters and memories passed down through generations. Through it all, the ranch stood as a testament to what Wade and Willa had built. The creek still ran through the property. The cottonwood trees, descendants of the ones Wade and Willa had sat under, still rustled in the Kansas wind. The land still held their love, their work, their dreams. And sometimes, on April 14th, when the wind blew just right and the setting sun painted the prairie gold, people swore they could see two figures on the porch of the old ranch house. A tall cowboy with kind eyes and a woman with golden hair, sitting together, watching the sunset, hands clasped, together for eternity. The story of Wade and Willa Davenport proved that one moment, one choice, one act of courage could change everything. It proved that love was worth any sacrifice. It proved that people could be good, could be kind, could be brave when it mattered most. And it all started with a cowboy walking into a saloon, seeing a woman who needed help, and making the choice that would define both their lives forever. He bought her freedom with everything he had, and she asked, "Why would you do that for me?" His answer was simple, because it was the right thing to do. But the truth was more complex and more beautiful. He did it because he saw her worth when no one else did. He did it because he could not walk away. He did it because something in him recognized something in her, a connection that defied explanation. And she loved him because he saw her as human, as valuable, as worthy of saving. She loved him because he asked nothing in return. She loved him because he gave her not just freedom from Silas, but freedom to be herself, to dream, to live. Their love story was not just about romance, though there was plenty of that. It was about recognition, about choosing to see the humanity in another person and acting on that recognition. It was about sacrifice that was not really sacrifice, because love made it worthwhile. Wade and Willa's descendants continued to share their story, making sure it was never forgotten. The ranch remained a family property, passed down through generations, a living monument to the love that started it all. And in Junction Creek, Kansas, people still talked about the Davenports, the legendary couple whose love had begun in the darkest of circumstances and had bloomed into something beautiful and lasting. Their story remained an inspiration, a reminder that no matter how dark things seemed, love could light the way. The legacy of Wade and Willa Davenport was not just their ranch or their descendants or even their story. It was the proof that goodness existed in the world, that people could rise above circumstances, that love could conquer anything when it was real and true and deep. $3,500 bought Willa's freedom from Silas, but what Wade really bought that day was a future. He bought a family, a home, a purpose, a love that would define his life. And Willa, with her question, "Why would you do that for me?" gave him the chance to be the man he wanted to be, the man who stood up for what was right no matter the cost. Together, they proved that love stories were not just fairy tales. They were real, they were possible, and they could last forever. And that was the greatest legacy of all.